Right now, somewhere in your day, you are going to do something you don't want to do. You already know what it is. You've tried to stop before. And every single time you felt that pull, you told yourself you'd resist. You didn't. That's not weakness. That's not a personal failing. That is your brain doing exactly what it was built to do. And the reason why is one of the strangest things science has ever found about the human mind. Here's what nobody tells you about habits. They don't live where you think they do. When you picture a habit, you probably picture a choice, a moment where you decide. But scientists have found that by the time a habit is fully formed, the part of your brain that makes decisions has already checked out. The lights are off, nobody's home, the behavior runs on its own, handled by a completely different part of your brain, one that is ancient, powerful, and almost totally immune to logic. And once that part takes over, your thinking mind doesn't just lose, it doesn't even know the fight happened. Anne Graybill at MIT has spent decades studying what goes on inside the brain as habits form. What she found changed the way scientists look at human behavior. When you first learn something new, the outer layer of your brain, the part that thinks and reasons, is working hard. It's paying close attention. But the more you repeat that action, something starts to shift. The thinking part gets quieter, and a deeper, older part of the brain called the basal ganglia starts running the show. The basal ganglia is not new. It has been sitting inside animal brains for hundreds of millions of years. It doesn't think. It doesn't plan. It doesn't care what you promised yourself last Monday. What it does is spot patterns and run them automatically. Give it the same sequence enough times, a trigger, an action, a reward, and it locks that sequence in, stores it. And the next time that trigger shows up, it runs the whole thing without asking you. Scientists call this chunking. It's the reason you can drive the same route home every day without thinking about a single turn. Your deep brain handled all of it. The thinking part was somewhere else entirely. Now here's where things get a little uncomfortable. Once a habit gets stored this way, it doesn't fade. It doesn't weaken over time. It doesn't vanish just because you stop doing it. It sits there, waiting. Studies have shown that even after months or years of not doing something, the old pattern is still there in the brain, fully intact. Ready to kick back in the moment the right trigger appears? Charles Duhigg, who spent years turning habit science into something ordinary people could use, put it simply, the habit loop never really goes away. It just gets buried. You can build new patterns on top of it, but underneath, the old one is still there, quiet, patient, waiting for its moment. That moment usually comes when you're tired, or stressed, or running on empty, because that's when the thinking part of your brain goes quiet. And the deep brain, which never gets tired, never wavers, never needs willpower, steps back in. This is why willpower feels like it keeps letting you down. You're not imagining it. It really does run out, not because you're weak, but because you're using the wrong tool against the wrong opponent. You're trying to outthink a system that runs completely below the level of thought. You're bringing logic to a fight that was already over before you even knew it started. So what actually happens inside you when a habit gets triggered? It starts with a cue. It can be almost anything: a time of day, a place, a feeling, a certain person walking into the room, even a smell. The deep brain, which is always scanning for familiar patterns, picks up on the cue and immediately starts running the routine attached to it. The routine plays out, the reward arrives. And the loop gets just a little bit stronger every single time. What makes this even harder is that the cue itself, before you've done anything at all, triggers a hit of dopamine. Not after the reward. Before it. Wolfram Schultz, a brain scientist at Cambridge who spent years studying dopamine, found that once a habit is locked in, the dopamine rush moves earlier and earlier in the sequence. Eventually, your brain releases it the moment it spots the cue. Not in response to what you did, but in response to what it knows is about to happen. This means your brain doesn't just enjoy the habit. It craves the feeling of starting it. The wanting kicks in before you're even aware you want anything. By the time you notice the pull, the whole system is already running. You're not being tempted. You're already in the middle of it. Graybill's research also found something else worth knowing. Right at the end of a habit, when the reward shows up, there's a small window. Just briefly, the deep brain loosens its grip, and in that moment, your thinking brain can step back in. It's the only point in the whole loop where your conscious mind actually has any real access. The start of the habit runs itself. The middle runs itself, only the very end offers a crack. This means trying to stop a habit the moment the cue shows up is almost impossible from a brain science standpoint. By the time you've noticed what's happening, you're already well past the starting line. That's why the most effective ways to break habits don't go after the habit directly, they go after the trigger. Or they swap out the action while keeping the same trigger and the same reward, because the deep brain doesn't care which action it runs. It just wants to finish the loop. Give it a different action that leads to a similar reward, and over time, it starts learning that new loop instead. That's not just good advice, that's working with how your brain is actually built. David Neal at Duke University ran a set of studies looking at how much your environment shapes your habits. What he found was striking. People were far more likely to drop old habits when they moved somewhere new. A new home, a new city, a new job. Why? Because all the small physical cues that had been setting off the loop were suddenly gone. No cue, no trigger, no trigger, no loop. This is why habits feel so much harder to shake when nothing around you changes. Your surroundings are quietly sending signals your deep brain has been trained to respond to. It hears them even when you don't. So what does any of this mean for you right now? It means the habit you've been trying to quit is not a sign of who you are. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's a pattern that got written into one of the oldest parts of your brain, made smoother and faster every time it ran. Until it became nearly automatic. And the part of you that regrets it, that promises to do better, that tries again and again, that part is simply not the part that takes over when the trigger shows up. The brain that makes the promise is not the brain that breaks it. But here's what might actually help. Now that you know where the loop lives, you can stop fighting it head on. You don't need more willpower. You don't need to feel worse about yourself. You need to change the thing that sets the loop off, or swap out the action in the middle. Or catch that small window at the end and use it to start building something new. The old loop won't disappear, but it can be covered over, replaced, redirected, not by forcing it, by understanding it well enough to work around it. Right now, somewhere in your day, you're going to feel that pull towards something you've been trying to stop, but this time you'll know exactly what's happening in your brain, even before you feel it. And that, more than anything else, might be what finally makes the difference.